Welcome to Frame of Reference, informed, intelligent conversations about the issues and challenges facing everyone in today's world. In-depth interviews to help you expand and inform your frame of reference. Now here's your host, Raul Labreche.
Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Frame of Reference, Profiles in Leadership. And I am hyped up not because of just the guests that I have, that would be enough, but I've actually been drinking green tea, Japanese green tea all morning long for a virus that I've been fighting. And I'm so amped up right now on green tea that you could bring on, I think, a sumo wrestler right now, and I would say, bring it, just bring it, okay? So I think we're going to have fun. My guests today are a power couple, if ever there was a power couple. I have to tell you, James, I looked at you guys' picture, you know, the headshots that they send, and I looked at those and thought, oh, wow, I am in for trouble here, because these people these are people that know how to get what they need to get out of life, and we're going to have a fun time going there. But James, I made a New Year's resolution this year. When I started doing the show again, I'm not introducing my guests anymore. I'm letting my guests introduce themselves, because you know you better than I know you. Bear knows her bear better than I know you. So why should I waste a bunch of time reading this stuff off of a piece of paper when I can have you just hit it with what is the James Arthur Ray story?
Well, if you're looking for an introduction, I'll abbreviate it.
Okay.
The James Arthur Ray story is kind of an epic story, which would take some time.
Yeah.
I think what I'm really committed to is truth and principles and values and morality, and I think those are very necessary in today's world. It's unfortunate that I feel like we've gotten so far away from those type of things, and we need to come back to center. And so that's, Bersaba and I both are totally committed, and she can speak for herself to helping people come back to center. Call that God, call that principle, whatever you want to label it, and to be independent thinkers. We're really committed to helping you become a critical thinker, an independent thinker, and to be able to think for yourself beyond the controlling narrative. So hopefully that makes sense to you, and that's kind of me in a nutshell.
It totally does. I was interested too. One of the things it does say in your intro is that you're a philosopher and a consultant. I thought, we're going to get along fine, because I totally resonate with the idea of we need more people that are willing to think, just think. I'm not asking people to do anything other than take a moment, step back, reflect on what's just been said, and then process it. And processing it means more than just saying, well, he said it, so it's got to be true. No, I've read it on the web thing there, and it's true. We have to be able to go deeper than that, right? So, Bear, how about you? I've read some fascinating things about you in your brief little biography, and I thought it is just a miracle that you are here today. I have to say that. It truly is.
Yes, it is.
And well, both of you, honestly, but Bear, I looked at your background just as a child and I think, oh my Lord, this is just, I'm so blessed to have someone like you come on the show and talk about your experiences. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. Since you put it that way, I will say I was a person, how would I sum it up? I say I am an example of possibility for someone who's completely broken.
To become whole.
To become whole.
Yeah.
To become whole, to become newborn, whatever label you want to put on it, but to be able to start all over, no matter the traumas that you've endured throughout your life.
And I can attest to that. For her, on her sake. Yes, that's true.
Well, and it's a difficult thing in a country like I think ours, where we are so conditioned to having virtually anything. Even our poorest people are rich by global standards in many cases. But the brokenness that occurs in our country is no less, I don't think, any less significant or less profound. But you say exactly the right thing. We can overcome. We can choose to go onto a different path. You made those choices, and you've been blessed by them, right? So. Yes. So, yes. Well, we can get back to that. All of that is, going to be an interesting journey in and of itself, right? But I warned you ahead of time. We do a little bit of my favorite things. If I had the money, I would pay the BMI and ASCAP licensing fees necessary to have Julie Andrews sing right now, so we could set the mood in a really appropriate way. I don't have that, so I can hum it a little bit for you. It's about the best I can do. But so favorite things. This is a very Roshaktian thing. I will throw out something, just whatever comes to your mind initially is what you go with. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. If you need to reclarify, but don't let it, because then you will never get anywhere. So I've had guests do that, and it's just like, just take a breath. It's okay. I'm just asking your favorite color. It's not anyways, here we go. So a favorite historical personality.
Ooh.
Who are you asking?
You either one. Whoever wants to go first. Jeopardy! You can hit the bell. Ding. So
I would have to go with Socrates.
Oh,
Socrates.
Yeah, I'm a big admirer of Socrates. I mean, I could easily say Plato too. Aristotle, not as much.
Really?
But still.
See, I had to read Aristotle as a graduate student, so I'm versed in him, although I've honestly probably forcefully forgot most of what he wrote. But what is it about the Socratic method? Is that what you enjoy?
Well, yeah. I get chastised frequently by my lovely wife for my Socratic method. She constantly, we have a ritual, Raul. Every morning we have coffee together, and we it's sacred. We don't do anything besides have coffee and conversation every single morning.
Sure.
And we get into these deep topics about life, and I will always ask her questions, and she's like, "Well, just tell me." I'm like, no, because if you tell me, then you own it. It's yours. If I tell you, you can forget it or blow it off. And but
it's fun.
I really do enjoy helping to individuals ferret out their own truth.
Sure.
And that's part of that independent thinking that we talked about earlier.
Sure.
And then I also really have a lot of admiration for Socrates because he was a rebel. He really went against the grain. He went against the common social political structure, which I can relate to as well. And he paid the price for it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
they almost let him off the hook. If you know the story, they were going to let him go, and he said something snide in court.
Couldn't keep it to himself. Yeah.
Yeah, he was, and so they gave him the hemlock, and he didn't fight. He just drank it. He just took it, and he wasn't afraid, of the hereafter. So there's a lot more about Socrates, but I'm a big admirer of him.
I'm not a marriage relationship counselor, but I would posit that your Socratic method is part of the reason you have a grizzly bear next to you. Because I don't think if you want to get rid of that grizzly bear quality in bear, I think maybe you might want to consider a different methodology for the morning at least. Okay, but Bear, how about you? Who's your favorite historical personality?
Ooh, historical personality. I would have to say right now, for the moment, I'm reading about him is King David.
Interesting.
Yeah, I find him fascinating. It's the first time I'm actually reading the story too.
Okay.
So it's his what do you call it? His belief and his faith, his courage is what resonates with me. I find it fascinating. Yeah.
Well, and again, I have to say that his wife was Bathsheba. And Beersheba.
I forgot.
Beersheba is a derivation.
I did make that connection myself. I did. I'm sorry. Yeah. Although we'd have to say too, look at the cost of that marriage as well. But
no, it cost him a lot. But they did produce Solomon.
That's true.
And so
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Always a silver lining or a gold one, right? So and I actually can identify. David has always fascinated me as well because he is Scripture calls him a man after God's own heart, right? So and I wondered more and more about that, but you have the reality of what he does with the power he has, and then the realization of what he's done. And the story of him with Nathan, and Nathan telling the whole story about the lamb and whatnot, and then saying, "You are that man." That's I think a realization that more people need to have, that dark side of us, and realizing that if given enough rope, we will hang ourselves and many, many others if we don't confront that, right? So
true.
How about your favorite? I'll do an easy one. Your favorite bird?
Ooh, hawk.
Eagle.
Oh.
You had eagle written all over you. I'm sorry. I could have just said. And if you didn't say eagle,
I'm a Scorpio in astrology, and the Scorpio's highest symbol is the eagle. The lower symbol is obviously the scorpion, but the higher symbol, some might be aware, is an eagle. And I've always been attracted to eagles, not just because I'm a Scorpio, but it's a symbol of the higher self in a lot of the ancient traditions. As is the hawk, by the way.
Raven is good.
Yeah. So you should actually come where I live in Sauk Prairie, Wisconsin. We're near an eagle watching. We're an eagle habitat in the wintertime in particular. So we have bald eagle watching days, in fact, in Sauk Prairie. So this is the place. If you're an eagle person, this is the cat's meow. So, but how about you, Bear? You have a favorite bird?
I said hawk, and then you took eagle. I'll say raven. I like ravens.
Ravens, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, said the raven. Nevermore.
Raven, nevermore.
Well, you do have Raven-esque hair. I mean, I do. That's obviously a tie-in. How about? Do you have a favorite type of music?
I do. I really like. I've gotten it, my musical types have changed over the years, and more so recently, I'm very fond, and I owe some of this to my lovely wife, of smooth jazz. It's just I like jazz, and the smoothness of it. It's calming. Mm-hmm. We play it a lot in our home and office, which our office is in our home, and it's really nice. It sets a nice vibe or environment in the home.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a particular type of jazz? Are we talking bebop, straight ahead, fusion? Is there
no
smooth
jazz?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I can get into some of the others too, but not in volumes.
Okay.
You know, the smooth jazz, we can play that all day long. Okay. And people come to our home or our office, whichever they're visiting, and they invariably say, "Man, the energy in here is just so nice," and that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. My roommate in undergraduate and graduate school first year was a jazz major. Worked on a master's degree in applied saxophone, which I didn't even know there was such a thing, but he got it. And so he was like, you listen to jazz or you don't listen to anything at all when we're in a room. So I'm the same way. It was like one of these forms of music I found and thought, wow, there's so much here. So, and everything from, Thelonious Monk to, he was really big into David Sanborn. So it was more, and Phil Wood. So all the saxophonists and Stan Kenton and all the people that, were in that kind of classic age of jazz. But,
right.
So I'll have to come hang out at your office. If I'm ever where you guys live, I'll just come out and I'll sit in the corner. I won't bother any of your clients or anything. I'll just sit and just bebop.
We have statues of eagles in our house. We don't have any real eagles.
Does that count?
That sounds like a good plan. I like that. Okay, how about last one? Is there a favorite memory that you have, or a favorite thing that when you come across it, it just brings you back to a really well-centered or just a really fond place? Because I think of people talk about baked bread. The smell of baked bread just brings them back to their mom's kitchen or something, or something that just really resonates deep inside of them. They don't even necessarily understand it, but it's like, man, I got to have more of this in my life.
I'll let you take that one because I took the last one.
Oh, memory. Well, that's kind of, my memories are not so fun.
So it might be a more recent memory. It doesn't have to be.
Sure. Okay, so more recent memories, I would say, there is a song that I hear that will take me back to a place of centeredness, which it's just yeah, I can't even explain the feeling. It's almost like being high or something. I don't. It's an amazing place to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's nice how we
Yeah.
have those things too, right? And sometimes I don't know if your experience is this or not, but sometimes when I try to forcefully create it, it doesn't work. But then there are other times where I really need it and it happens, and I feel like, okay, thank you so much, God. Thank you for letting that moment happen right now and helping me to be sensitive to that it was happening, right? So, but
yeah.
All right. You got time to think there. You had lots of time to think about something, dear.
Oh, you want me to answer?
Oh, yeah, you got to.
I had the answer the moment you asked the question.
Oh, okay.
My favorite memory is the night that my wife proposed to me.
Oh, here comes the grizzly again. Oh, I'm going to turn off the viewpoint here for a little bit. Okay.
Score me some points, I would hope.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
No, that's a really fond memory. It's a great story. But anyway.
So you knew from that moment on, this was it. It was just done, right? That was.
Yeah. Well, she's a woman who goes after what she wants, and I wasn't moving quickly enough for her. I'll tell you the quick story is I had planned to ask her to marry me, and I had the ring, and I'm a hopeless romantic, okay. And so I planned this big evening, this big gala, and I had a penthouse suite on, in the top of the strip in Vegas, and we went out to dinner the weekend prior, and we haven't had a drink for 2 years. We don't drink anymore, but we used to drink some wine, not a lot, but we had a couple glasses of wine, and I was sitting there, and it just came out, and I said, well, honey, I see us being together for the rest of our lives. And she said, are you proposing to me? And I said, no. If I was proposing to you, why would I do it here? I want to do it right. I was going to get down on my knees, the whole thing. And she goes, well, are we going to get married or not? And I said, are you proposing to me? And she goes, yes, I am. What's the answer? I said, yes, dear. Yes, dear.
Oh, how romantic. Oh, my heart's going flutter with that. Yeah.
No, it's so Beersheba. And then she gave me the cost of the suite, and I still got the prize. So anyway.
That's probably one of the more beautiful stories I've ever heard. So it's people being people. So, well, I have to, Beersheba, I have to ask you about this because it struck me so much. Your biography talks about a childhood that I just can't imagine. I just can't. And it's probably a good thing that I can't, because you had to live it, and it's got to be hard. And I know that you guys your lives, your mission, your work is about not being trapped in those moments. But I think it's a powerful, maybe invictive, if that's the right word, for people that are thinking their life is just so awful and, just stuck in that awfulness. Can you explain to people that the awful place you were in and how that you look at that awful place from the vantage point of years later? Is that?
Yeah. So I was born in Iran at a time where actually there was two things going on. There was one, the war with Iran and Iraq, and there was also they called it a revolution, but it wasn't a revolution. It was the Islamic regime that took over Iran. And when that happened, they gave a hard time to anyone who was not of the Islam faith. So I was raised in a Baha'i family. So they gave the Baha'is and the Jews and the Christians a very hard time. A very hard time. What I mean by that is that they would throw them in prison. They would rape the women. It was a mess. And so that was going on. And then there was also a war going on with Iran and Iraq. And a few of my first childhood memories, one was bombs being dropped in our neighborhood. That was norm. You hear gunshots at night, sirens going off, bombs being dropped, one being as close as a couple of houses down from us. The other being that the military came, knocked down our door, middle of the night, just ripped my dad out of my arms and threw him in prison. And when you go to prison there, you pretty much don't, the thought is that he's not coming back. That's it. It's done.
How old were you?
Well, the first time it happened, because it happened a couple of times. The first time it happened, I believe I was 3 years old. The second time it happened, I was either 5 or 6 years old. And the reason the second time it happened was we were going to leave the country. And you can't just leave, you have to escape. So my father thought, let me go first and create a life here in the States, and then I'll bring the rest of the family. Well, he got caught. He got caught and thrown in prison. And thankfully, he still made it through. And when he came out, we all decided to leave together as a family. Now, this time I'm being probably 7 years old. So we had to, and how you did it there was you find someone and you pay them and they smuggle you out of the country. Yeah. And if you get caught, you die. That's basically what you're risking. And so we did that. And there, when you pay these people, first of all, you don't know who these people are. And there's a lot of things going on there, like human trafficking, sex trafficking, all that. And I remember the second stop from this person that was transporting us from our stops. We had 3-4 different stops within the desert. And he took us for a ride for hours, like we were lost, but he had other plans. We didn't have any water. We totally dehydrated, no food. My mom was passed out. Older brother was passed out. And my dad kept telling me, you need to stay awake. It's important. Talk to your brother, make sure that he stays awake, because this guy had something else planned for us. And thankfully, the Turkish police pulled us over, and he had water, gave us water. I'll never forget that water. the drink of water. And I remember I was just standing there staring at him, hopeless, hoping that, asking for help with my eyes or something, because he looked down at me and he was staring back, and he's like, you know what? He decided to escort us to our next stop in Turkey, which he saved our lives pretty much. Wow. And from there, we had to live in Pakistan for a couple of years, so that we could get our visas and come to the States. Living in Pakistan we slept on the floor. It was a mess. It's not something. So when we came to the States, it was kind of like, oh, now we can, it's safe. You could go outside, you could sleep at night and not worry about bombs or people, a military coming in and, doing things. So it's
right.
You have a appreciation for freedom, that's for sure.
And then this happened. Well, this happened over a series of time. I mean, some of the other stuff I read about in terms of the lifestyle choices that you made initially, which obviously the trauma reaction, right? And not having the adult maturity or whatever you call it, the faculties to be able to say, no, this isn't the right way to go. That makes sense. But if you were talking to somebody right now that has a life that they're saying, why me? Right. That question gets asked a lot. What would your first words be to a person that's saying, why me? Why does this horrible life have to happen to me?
Well, I would say, that's a tough question to answer, but in the ultimate sense, I would say, why not you? In the ultimate sense, I would say it's these very things that gives you the capacity to be able to experience something far greater. Because if you don't have the depths, let's call it hell, from hell, how can you know something that's amazing or close to God? You can't, because there's no reference. You can't point. Compare it. Right. And and I understand it, because when you come from traumas of whether, I've had those traumas with my child, and then getting into drugs and then alcohol and the addiction and substance abuse and all that. And there's other people who experience sexual abuse and all those things. These things, what happens, it scars us. Now, what I had to do was I literally had to go back and I worked on all of these traumas to heal them, because the reaction it was having was the actions I was taking. For example, I smoked cigarettes for 24 years. I did all kinds of drugs, and I drank tons of alcohol because of the addictive personality, because there was this pain inside that nothing would quench it. Nothing would save me from it. So the cause was, the traumas. I didn't know that. And the effects were the cigarettes, alcohol, and drugs. So then when I took all those away, then I started dealing with what I was suppressing from before.
Sure.
And little by little, and you got to work at it, because it's not easy. It's hard work. Little by little, I healed each trauma and went through it with James's help. And it's possible for someone who comes from a broken background like that to be able to live from a new perspective, completely new person, and not be attached to your experiences.
Right. Yeah. Right. Not be in love. I think sometimes there is a little bit of I'm in love with my misery, right? It's such a comfortable relationship that to break that relationship. It's the only relationship sometimes I think people have. It's the only relationship they trust because they know where it goes, right? It's a risky thing.
In some cases, there's a concept in psychology called secondary gain.
Yeah.
And you're probably maybe familiar with this, but in some cases it gives us a convenient excuse to not take responsibility. Well, I'm a little demon, and why should I not be? Because look at the demonic things I've been through. Yeah. And the reality is, yes, you've been through demonic things, and yes, you are a demon, and yet that's not who you really are. And if you're willing to take responsibility and do the work, then you can step into your true self.
Right.
But it does take work. I mean, Bishop, we've been together 11 years, and it's she's worked diligently. I mean, I don't know. I've worked with over 1 million people from 147 countries, and I've never met anyone that is so committed and has so much perseverance like she has. And that's what it takes. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Yeah. If you want it handed to you, it's not going to be. So, and that wraps right into one of the first questions. I have to say, too, I love your suggested interview questions, because they're things I would have asked anyways, but it's just nice to see you're already suggesting them. I don't have to worry about getting into some territory that you go, oh, yeah, I wish you wouldn't have asked about that. So, or get ticked or something. But you have a book out. You actually have a number of books. That was part of what we didn't talk about in your intro, is that you're a best-selling author. New York Times best-selling author, so no slouch task there. We're not talking to some guy. Yeah, he's got the Southside Indiana bestsellers list. Oh, wow!
Amazon.
Yeah, which means you bought a bunch of copies yourself, and
that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
In my garage.
Right. Anybody can be a bestseller now. But the books that you were known for up until this time, I think, seem to be more kind of self-help books, I guess I'd call them. But your latest one is called The Business of Redemption. And I thought that was an interesting title. But what exactly does that mean? I suspect it has something to do with exactly what Bersaba has been through, the business of redemption, right?
It does, and what I've been through, and that's what brought us together, and literally allowed her, and I say this with absolute literal intentions, she saved my life, because if you know my story, I went to the peak of my profession. I had everything you could imagine: Larry King, Oprah, best-selling book, Inc. 500 company, all those things. And then lost it all in a heartbeat in a horrible accident in Sedona, Arizona in 2009. And ended up, and if you want to get into the details, we can get into them, but ended up, I talk about all of this in The Business of Redemption, ended up in a horrible accident, lost it all, and ended up going to prison for for 2 years for negligence because 3 people actually lost their lives in a sweat lodge that I was conducting, broke my heart. So I came out in 2013 and I was 54 years of age and I was in horrible physical condition, had periodontal disease. I was alone. I didn't know her yet. We met in 2013. I was homeless and I was $20 million in debt.
Sure.
And so, where do you go at that point? And so I had to dig deep and I realized I really needed redemption. And I believe, I'll define that clearly in just a moment, but I will say with conviction that our country needs redemption. Our world needs redemption. Every one of us needs redemption. What does that mean? We hear that a lot in spiritual circles, which I'm totally in alignment with. And yet, if you look up the true definition of redemption, it is to gain or regain something by paying the price. Mm-hmm. And so if you, as a viewer today, need to gain something you've never had, then you need redemption. If you need to regain something you once had but you lost, then redemption is your answer. And here's the key, though, by paying the price, because there's always a price for the prize. And the bigger the prize you're going after, the bigger the price you must pay. That's just how it works. And so as I stood there in the desert and realized I was in desperate need of redemption, I realized I had to really remember who I was. I had to get my head on straight. I had to get my heart in the right place. I had to think about who was I going to be. I call this version of me James 3.0, which implies there's a 2.0 and a 1.0. And those, we talked about 16.7. As a 16.7, I've had some previous crash and burns. And that's part of our path in this lifetime, from a mystical perspective. And so anyway, that's what I talk about in the business of redemption, is the entire story of what I did while I was in prison, my entire journey there, and what I did after I came out, and my climb back to, I'm obviously today, the debt is fully retired. I'm super grateful. I'm in great health and fitness, maybe the best health and fitness in my life. I'm not alone anymore. I'm married to the most amazing woman on the planet, and I'm not homeless. We've got a beautiful home in Henderson, Nevada. And so, again, what I would say to you, much like similar to Beersheba, if you're struggling today, which a lot of people are, there is redemption. There is the God-given potential within you to take your power back. And you have to remember first and foremost who you are, and then you have to continually remind yourself of that daily.
I keep listening to you, and I apologize, my brain keeps coming up with this question. You talk about it in your book right at the very beginning, the why me question. And yet one question I never see, and maybe I haven't read far enough in the book, so I apologize for that. But one question or one assertion I never hear you say or read you say is, it's not my fault. And that, to me, is a critical thing today, especially with our political leadership. We have so much of this "it's not my fault" mentality that, as long as that's part of our psyche and part of our, strategy for dealing with the world around us, I don't really care anymore. If you can't accept responsibility for your part in it, I mean, the world, the nation, our communities, the way they are right now, it is all of our fault. And we either have to fess up to that and say, all right, what part did I play in this? And then confront it, or we continue to live in denial, which denial is not just a river in Egypt, right? It is a real thing.
I thought that was my line.
Oh, sorry. I had to be, I knew it was coming. I needed to get it out there quickly. I need to be the witty host. Yeah, that's just the way it works.
First time I've ever heard it from anyone besides myself. So I'm impressed. You're so spot on. The border is not my problem. It's the problem of the president that was 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Please. All right. What I talk about in redemption is taking absolute responsibility. Absolute. And I mean that literally, because I've been really blessed to have some great teachers. One of them was a kahuna, which is a sacred teacher in the Huna tradition out of the South Pacific. And he told me, to take absolute responsibility for every single thing in my life. For instance, if I don't like who's in office, well, to your point, how did I contribute to that? If I don't like what's going on in our country, how did I contribute to that? And it's very empowering. Some of the things seem to be a stretch. I don't know that I can take responsibility for that, James. Well, just pretend like you can. And if you come from that perspective, it's a very empowering thought experiment, because when you take absolute responsibility for everything in your life, then you have the capability to change it. As long as you're playing the victim or pointing the finger, you're going to stay the victim, and you don't have the capability to change it.
I find too, in my relationships in particular, I get distracted by other people's dilemmas, other people's, well, you should be doing this. And that to me is, I have a lot of theater background, and to me, that's the same thing as an actor that's worried about another actor's lines. That's the quickest way to forget your lines. It's just, I hope they don't blow this. Oh my God, they blew the cross. That's just a surefire way to kill your play, right? Do you find that to be true in the consulting that you do, that people have to stop focusing on, see what they do, see what they're doing? And that takes the focus off the inner journey that we have to be on, which is, but what about you? Don't worry about the speck of dust over there. Worry about the log over here. So.
Yeah. Very wise teacher said that. The speck of dust, the log in your own eye.
Yeah.
And yes, we find that all the time. And in fact, it's almost like it's an epidemic. What do other people think? Well, let me tell you what other people think. They don't think, they don't really think about you. If they have so much going on for themselves, they don't have the time or the bandwidth to be concerned really about you. And if they're a troll or they're just hating on you, then get a life. I mean, seriously, get a life. Yeah. And other people's opinions can keep you stuck. And I see this all the time. I'll give you a simple example, mundane example. The giant, the business giant, who goes home to his parents or her parents' home, and the parents still have them frozen in time as a child. And they treat them like a child.
True.
And I've seen those giants, those intellectual giants, become children with their parents, because other people's opinions of you can keep you stuck. And you have to, I find so many people selling out their morality, selling out their truth, selling out their capabilities, because they're so afraid that they're going to ruffle some feathers. Well, I believe, and it's a lot easier for me, Raul, because I got knocked
away.
I got knocked down hard.
Yeah.
I was crucified by the media, literally crucified. And boy, it hurt. But now I'm kind of Teflon, because after you get called so many names and get so many arrows coming at you, then it's kind of like, whatever, and I think we all have to develop that. And it really pains me to see so many people selling out their truth and selling out what they believe because they don't want to ruffle feathers. And what I'll just say in closing on this topic is, if you're not making waves, you're playing in the shallow end of the pool, period. You should be making waves.
Yeah. Isn't there a Japanese proverb, something to the effect of the nail that stands out gets hammered first? So, and there's a lot of truth to that. So in America today, Bear, as a person who's relatively new American, right, compared to those of us that are in our 60s, I think. I'm 63. Yeah, okay. So, and have been experiencing America for a long time. So what's the key right now? What if you were to say, I've talked with holistic medicine people, and they talk about how our pharmaco industry is so interested in treating the symptoms that they don't get at the cause of what's going on. And I see that happening a lot from my perspective in our country right now, that we're looking at symptoms instead of looking at the cause. And I think that a lot of it comes to one of the questions you have about the softening of the men in the world today and toxic masculinity. And I thankfully live with two women, my daughter and my wife, that are, both intellectual superiors to me in many, many ways, and call me on my baloney really quickly. And sometimes I listen and learn and go, thank you so much. And sometimes I go, oh, yeah. So, and you can imagine how well those times go. So, and it is always, one of the things that has come up is that toxic masculinity. And I see that in the world and in our country in particularly, and globally. I mean, you look at, people like Putin and, Xi Jinping and their toxic masculinity definitions right there. What do you say to people that are looking at a world that needs softened men, and to get them to say, that's not a softened man, that's a real man. That's a person that sees a higher calling for men and women everywhere. Is there a cure for that? What's the cause of that we see it so stupidly?
Yeah, we were talking about that this morning.
Over coffee.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
That was our topic.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, what we come up with was the
Go
cause.
ahead.
Well, I was telling him, I've noticed, okay, so if I were to look at Gen Xers and below, so Gen Xers, millennials, and is it Gen Zs?
Z.
Yeah, so what I don't know the age range. Is it 50 and below or 55 and below? I'm not sure. But Gen Xers are like borderline. They're kind of toxic masculinity. Yeah. So
they're angry about everything.
They're angry about everything.
With few exceptions.
Yeah. But they still have a little bit, I think, of masculinity. But then you have the baby boomers, I believe. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's my generation.
Right. So your guys' generation, and I look at that generation and I say, those are men. These were men. This is what men used to look like.
Hey,
right?
I like her. No wonder you married her. So yeah. What is that, man? I feel like, the whole thing going on right now with Trump and the insurrection, is it an insurrection? I would have more respect for them if they would stand up and say, damn right it was an insurrection. We were standing up to this country once and for all and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that would be refreshing. But instead of, it was just a demonstration. We were just protesting our free rights of speech. And I'm like, really? Really? So we can't even have the integrity to call ourselves what we are, which is messed up, right? I don't get where that. When does it stop? When do we start? We used to be great. America has so much potential for being great. We are squandering it in stupidity and ignorance and denial and lack of humility. You have a story that I think typifies that, right? Everything is stripped away from you. In prison, that is about as low as I think anyone can go, right? And yet you came out of it without going, not my fault, not my fault. See, I was absolved from it. It's not. You came out of it going, no, I'm going to rectify this. How does America do that?
Yeah. Well, why don't you talk about some of the qualities, since you started this, some of the qualities of a true man?
Well, I would say one of the things that I see that's missing, if I were to look at it generationally between me and him, I would say I'm a millennial, so I'm 43, so and he's a baby boomer. So what we were missing was the family unit. Growing up, there was no family. The TV raised me, and he had a family unit. One thing America had, I say, it's still kind of, some people still have it, is values and the Constitution, which is in God. It was that's what it is principles and values and family and structures and rules. Morality,
virtue,
right?
Yeah,
in
integrity.
Places where, yes, and in places when these things no longer are in effect or count, and anything goes. Oh, one day I could be a man, next day I could be a woman, or I could be whatever I want. I feel like I'm a cat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
what is
like,
a woman?
What
is a woman?
When you don't believe in anything, you'll believe in anything, pretty much. You'll believe in everything. So, and what I see happening here is kind of and they what do you call it? They clothe it in it's democracy. Well, okay, inclusion,
Yeah.
democracy, inclusion, and well, that's what they were preaching in Iran right before the Islamic Republic took over. So, what I see happening right in front of my eyes here in the United States is the same thing that happened in Iran. And it was all in the name of democracy. And then when it came, the regime, whatever you want to call it, and the Ayatollah came out, the very first day in power, he said, okay, from this day forth, the women have to start covering their head. And everyone's going, wait, what? What happened? And that was it. And that's what's happening here. I mean, there's people that speak out the truth, and they're getting thrown in prison in the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Without a trial.
Without a trial. I mean, that's scary.
Yeah. So
that's scary. They broke the family unit. They took the father out of the house, the mother out of the house, and they said, no, woman needs to be like a man and work. No, she doesn't. To be a mom is very noble, and it's a job. It's a very important job.
It's not demeaning at all.
It's the most important job a person could have is to be a mother, because you are raising the future.
Yeah.
But they diminish that.
It's been very much minimized, and I think Bersa was correct. The shattering of the family unit. If you look at, and I'm writing about this in my new book, which I'm working on right now. But if you look at how the hierarchy used to be, it was God, and then it was family, and then it was church, and then it was maybe community, school system, and we could argue maybe they shuffle around a bit. But where there's no argument is the pinnacle of the hierarchy was God, and in a secular society, which is secular is defined as religious indifference or skepticism. We've gotten so far away from that, let's call it a vertical relationship, even though that's a metaphor. And so it leaves us at flatland. It leaves us with a horizontal relationship. And the only thing we have, and Beersheba didn't have a family unit. My family, my dad was home every night for dinner. My mom was home when I got home from school. We ate every dinner together, and we talked with each other and debriefed our day. And that was the norm. Well, not anymore, and so unfortunately, what happens? Well, Beersheba happened. She didn't have that structure, so she goes out into her neighborhood, which was not the best of environments, and starts interacting with gang members and people who are doing drugs. And now this becomes the norm. And I build my ethics based upon what I see around me versus these fundamental principles that are moral and right and true, that are innate in us unless we suppress them and move away from them. I don't think there's such a thing. I would have to disagree with you respectfully on Putin. I don't think there's such a thing as toxic masculinity. Well, there might be. Andrew Tate, or some of those. I mean, that's machismo. That's not a man. I'm sorry. Macho is not masculinity. Because if you're a man, you don't have to prove it. You just are it. And so for me, you've got integrity, you've got morals, you want to take care of your woman and your family, and you can share your feelings with your woman and your family. You don't stuff them and say, oh, that's not manly. I was really blessed. I grew up with a father, most in my genre or in my age bracket, and maybe you too, were taught men don't cry. Well, my dad told me men can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And I was blessed, you know, and a lot of us were taught, walk it off, bucko.
Right.
What do you complain about? Now, that's needed when you look at, may I use the term snowflake?
Right.
When you look
Right.
at the snowflakes who, I can't work 8 hours a day. You know, I mean, please. You know, I've been in this body 6 years and I work 12 hours a day.
Right.
So come whining to me, get your butt out there and get busy, and do something with your life.
Fair. Well, you know, and it's difficult. We talk, you know, and I shouldn't bring, I guess, national figures into the equation, because the difficulty with all of that, anybody that's in that realm, is the media defines the narrative for how those folks are described, right? So we don't really know. We can't know. I'm not, you know, what's the Mark Twain's old saying, you know, believe half of what you see and nothing of what you hear, you know. So in there, it is so easy to have our perceptions of anyone, you know, narrated for us by someone else, and again, not think about it, right? So, because you have to, I really am thankful for my background in theater, because I played a lot of characters that were quote unquote despicable people. You know, they were folks that you would not like if you ran into them at a cocktail party. And the reality is that when you're playing any character, you have to understand that nobody sees themselves as an antagonist. They just don't. Everybody has a reason, right? I'm a complete jerk because if I'm not a complete jerk, blah, 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 blah. Or because of what happened.
I'm the protagonist.
Right.
I'm the protagonist.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, these people are the antagonists because, you know, they ask stupid questions in the morning. Why can't they be more like coffee? Coffee doesn't ask stupid questions in the morning. So, yeah, I mean, you have to be, I know we have to be careful of that. And we are, I think part of the problem with the softening of men or the whatever all that is that we're allowing other people to define that for us. Is there a driver? And we're running out of time. I'm really sorry about that. I'm looking at the clock here going, we have to have an easy question at the end here that we can wrap up with. Is there a really powerful driver in human behavior and that you think any person could take and say, I'm going to really just work on this thing, this behavior, this attitude?
Yes. I would say for men, if we're talking about men, a couple things. Workout. You know, it's important. God gave you a body and your body needs to be strong and flexible. Work out. That takes discipline. Number two, stay away from porn. You know, I mean, if you look at current research, a lot of our younger men don't even care to have sex anymore. They don't, their sperm count is in the tank, and this is all documented. And that, you know, that's a driver of the masculinity. And so stay away from that. It's gonna ruin your future relationships. And work out, and then study eternal principles. You know, as a true philosopher would say, study eternal truth. Study the great masters, because we have a group that gets together every other Thursday night, and we're studying the great philosophers right now. And when you look at all the great philosophers, from Socrates to Plato, to Plotinus to Buddha, any of them, they talk about fundamental principles and truths. Be honest, tell the truth, be moral, be principled, stay away from drugs, stay away from alcohol, you know, all those types of things. It's pretty simple. It's just simply not applied.
And there you have it. So, folks, my guests today have been James Earl Ray and Beersheba Ray. I have to stay with Beersheba. But James is a New York Times bestselling author, philosopher, consultant, worked with over 1 million people. You said it yourself. 1 million people in 147 countries, I thought you said, not 146. So you've added a country somewhere along the line here. But author of many books that are wonderful. I would particularly put people towards your latest book, The Business of Redemption. I've just read the first couple of chapters and already thinking, why didn't I start this earlier before our interview? I'd have much more intelligent questions to ask. And Bersaba, thank you so much for being alongside your wonderful man there and for supporting him. So thank you both for your time. I hope we can maybe join each other again at some point in the future and talk some more, seeing as we got about that much. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
We would enjoy that.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, both of you. And thank you, folks, for listening to Frame of Reference Profiles in Leadership. I've given you a great profile in leadership here, both the male and the female side of it. So please take it and run with it. See you next week.